You think you're brave enough to hear our terrifying stories? Before the darkness consumes you and the story begins, subscribe, if you dare. The Last Dish. I had been working at Le Gourmet for almost 3 years. Situated in a century-old building with brick walls and grand arches, the restaurant was steeped in history. Over the years, it had garnered a reputation for its fine cuisine and mysterious ambiance. Tonight was special, though. After decades of service, Le Gourmet was closing its doors. There was an outpouring of regulars, all coming to savor their favorite dishes one last time. As the evening came to an end and the last customer left with satisfied smiles, the reality hit me. This was my last shift. I felt a mixture of relief and melancholy as I began my closing duties. Anna, our head chef, called out from the kitchen. "Could you help me with some leftovers? We need to clear everything out." I entered the dimly lit kitchen, where large copper pots and pans dangled from hooks and shadows danced on the walls. In the center was an old oven, its iron door decorated with intricate designs, and it always seemed to emanate an uncanny warmth, even when not in use. Anna pointed to a large pot filled with the evening's unsold soup. "Could you pour it down the drain? It's a shame, but it can't be helped." I lifted the heavy pot and approached the sink. As I began to pour out the soup, I heard a soft whisper. "Not waste me." Thinking it was Anna, I turned around, but she was at the other end of the kitchen, busy wrapping utensils. Shaking off the eerie feeling, I continued. As the last of the soup went down the drain, a violent gust of wind blew through the kitchen, extinguishing the lights. In the dim glow from the street lamps outside, I could make out the old oven door slowly creaking open. From its depths, a spectral figure emerged. It was an old chef, his uniform tattered and stained, his face gaunt, eyes hollow, yet burning with anger. "You waste the essence of Le Gourmet," he hissed. "The love, the care, the history." Frozen in fear, I watched as he approached a pot, collecting the steam rising from it into a vial. "Every dish has a soul, and you've just thrown one away." Anna, hearing the commotion, rushed over. Her face went pale as she saw the apparition. "It's Chef René," she whispered, referencing the founder of Le Gourmet, who had mysteriously disappeared decades ago. René glared at Yves, holding up the veal filled with the steam. For every dish wasted, a soul must replace it. With that, he lunged at Anna. I grabbed the nearest object, a cast-iron skillet, and swung it at René. It passed right through him, but it bought Anna enough time to break free. "We need to leave, now," I yelled. But as we turned to flee, the kitchen's exit sealed shut with a gust of wind. Trapped, we watched in horror as René approached an old recipe book, its pages yellowed with age. He began chanting in a language neither of us recognized. The kitchen utensils levitated, pots and pans clanging in a frenzied dance. "We need to break the curse," Anna shouted over the cacophony. "We have to make a dish worthy of Le Gourmet's legacy." With René distracted, we scrambled for ingredients. Anna swiftly chopped vegetables as I seared meat, our combined years of culinary experience guiding our every move. Every spice, every flavor had to be perfect. As the dish came together, the room grew colder. René's chanting grew louder, and the vial of steam in his hand glowed brighter. With a final flourish, Anna plated the dish, its aroma filling the kitchen. "It's done," she declared, her voice filled with hope and determination. The dish levitated, floating towards René. He stopped his chanting, his hollow eyes assessing our creation. The room was thick with anticipation. Slowly, René extended a ghostly hand, tasting the dish. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. Then, a look of realization crossed his face. "It's perfect," he murmured. The spectral chef began to fade, the vial falling and shattering on the floor. The kitchen returned to normal, the door unsealing itself. Anna and I rushed out, the cold night air a sharp contrast to the heated terror we'd just experienced. The bright sign of the gourmet flickered and went dark. No one believed our story, attributing it to the stress of the restaurant closing. But Anna and I knew the truth. Le Gourmet may have shut its doors, but its legacy lived on, in the dishes created and the memories of its patrons, and in the haunted kitchen where a dish was once wasted. But a legacy was saved. The dish not on the menu. Ever since I took the job at L'Étrange, things were odd. This upscale restaurant, nested in an inconspicuous alleyway, was known for its exclusivity. If you weren't in the know, you wouldn't even realize it existed. When the owner, Mr. Brouillard, offered me the position of the head chef after my culinary school graduation, I was both surprised and thrilled. The restaurant's interior was a mix of Gothic and modern, dim chandeliers hung from the ceilings, casting a ghostly illumination. Customers were always dressed impeccably, and their conversations were whispers, creating an atmosphere of hushed reverence. Things started off normally. My menu was an instant hit. From duck confit to the richest chocolate soufflé, people raved about the dining experience. But there was one dish I didn't design. La spécialité de la maison. It wasn't listed on the menu. Yet, every night, at least one guest would request it. My sous-chef, a thin, wiry man named Luc, would prepare the dish. Luc had been at L'Étrange for years and knew the recipe by heart. He was fiercely protective of it, never allowing me or anyone else in the kitchen when it was made. All I knew was that the dish was meat-based, the rich aroma was unmistakable. One evening, a prominent food critic came to review L'Étrange. I was informed beforehand that he would be ordering La spécialité de la maison. The pressure was on. Luc set to work, sending everyone out of the kitchen. The critic, a portly man with a sharp eye, seemed to enjoy the entire meal, scribbling notes between bites. But when the special dish arrived, he paused, taking in its aroma, then tasting it with visible delight. After the meal, he requested to meet me. "Your menu," he began, "is outstanding. But that last dish, it's unparalleled. What is it?" Flattered but clueless, I replied, "It's an old recipe passed down through the ages at L'Étrange." Weeks passed, and my curiosity about La spécialité de la maison grew. One night, after the restaurant closed, I decided to uncover its secret. Luc stored the ingredients in a locked cooler. Using a spare key I'd managed to swipe, I entered. Inside, I found an assortment of regular ingredients, but a separate, chilled compartment drew my attention. Bracing myself, I opened it. What I saw made my heart drop. Large, clear bags filled with a reddish liquid and cuts of meat, labeled with names. The horror of the realization hit me. La spécialité de la maison was human. I staggered out, trying to process the revelation. Confronting Luc was my only option. He was cleaning up, his back to me. "Luc," I began shakily, "I know about the dish." He paused, then slowly turned to face me. His expression was unreadable. "Then you know too much," he whispered. In a flash, he lunged at me with a cleaver, but I dodged, sending pots and pans crashing. The noise alerted Mr. Brouillard, who rushed into the kitchen. Seeing the chaos, he quickly assessed the situation. "Luc," he shouted, "enough!" Luc, panting, stepped back. Mr. Brouillard approached me, his usually stern face showing a hint of regret. "I hoped you'd never find out. L'Étrange serves a unique clientele with specific tastes. Our special dish caters to them." Disgust and anger welled up in me. "You're monsters." Luc grinned. "The world is filled with monsters, chef. Some just hide it better." Mr. Brouillard sighed. "I won't ask you to understand, but I ask for your silence. L'Étrange has been here for centuries. Many have discovered our secret, but they've also found our compensation. Persuasive." He handed me an envelope. Inside was a check, the amount enough to change my life forever. "You can walk away now, start fresh. We will move on, and our paths need never cross again." The weight of the situation pressed on me. The horror, the money, the choices. I left L'Étrange that night, the echoing laughter of Luc lingering in my ears. The money allowed me to travel, start new ventures, but the cost of that silence haunted every moment. L'Étrange disappeared from the alleyway, as if it never existed. Yet, sometimes, in a crowded market or a lonely street, I'd spot Luc or Mr. Brouillard watching me, a knowing smirk on their faces. The price of my silence wasn't just the horrors of the past. It was echoes at Eclair's. Eclair's was an enigma. Tucked away at the end of a cobblestone alley, it was an upscale restaurant in the middle of nowhere. Its history was shrouded in mystery, with rumors of its founder, Madame Eclair, disappearing without a trace decades ago. When I started working there, I was immediately captivated by its charm. Rich mahogany tables, gold-trimmed mirrors, and the ever-present smell of fresh roses created an atmosphere of opulence. But it wasn't long before I felt that something was off. It began with soft whispers. While setting tables or serving guests, I'd hear my name being called, only to find out more. I brushed it off as my imagination until other staff members mentioned similar experiences. Then, there were the cold spots. Specific areas in the restaurant where the temperature would suddenly drop. Strangely, these spots coincided with ornate floor tiles depicting a rose, the restaurant's emblem. The most unsettling incidents, however, were the reflections. I'd often catch glimpses of unfamiliar faces in the mirrors, staring back with hollow eyes. They'd vanish as soon as I'd blink. The final straw was during one particularly busy evening. I was serving the main course to a group when I saw a reflection of a woman standing behind me. Dressed in a dated black gown, she looked eerily similar to the portraits of Madame Eclair hung around the restaurant. Startled, I dropped the tray, causing a commotion. Apologizing profusely, I rushed to the kitchen to gather my thoughts. The head chef, Laurent, a middle-aged man who'd been at Eclair's for years, noticed my distress. "You saw her, didn't you?" he asked. I nodded, recounting my experience. Laurent sighed. "It's time you know the truth about Eclair's." Taking a deep breath, he began. Madame Eclair wasn't just the founder. She was the heart and soul of this place, passionate about her culinary craft. She was known to experiment with unique ingredients, creating dishes that were out of this world. One evening, after the restaurant had closed, she was working on a new recipe. A dish she claimed would be her magnum opus. But something went wrong. The next morning, the staff found the restaurant in disarray. Ingredients scattered, utensils strewn around, and Madame Eclair gone. The only clue was the unfinished dish on the table and a shattered vial labeled Essence of the Abyss. Ever since, strange occurrences have plagued Eclair's. We believe Madame Eclair's spirit is trapped, bound by her unfinished dish. Overwhelmed, I decided to take a break. But as I walked around, a thought struck me. What if we could finish the dish and set her spirit free? Returning to the kitchen, I shared my idea with Laurent. He hesitated, but then nodded. "It's worth a try." Using the notes we found in Madame Eclair's personal diary, we began recreating the dish. Every ingredient was meticulously added, but the main component, the essence of the abyss, was missing. Laurent remembered an old locked cabinet, untouched for years. Breaking it open, we found a single vial inside. With bated breath, I added a drop of the essence to the dish. The room darkened. An icy wind swirled around us. The ground trembled, and from the shadows, Madame Eclair's apparition emerged. Her form, though translucent, bore an expression of anguish. She approached the dish, her fingers brushing against the plate. The room lit up with an otherworldly glow. The scent of roses grew overpowering. And then, just as suddenly, everything stopped. Madame Eclair stood before us, not as a ghost, but as flesh and blood. Tears streaming down her face, she whispered, "Thank you." Before we could react, she began to fade, turning into a cascade of rose petals that danced in the air before settling on the ground. Eclair's continued to operate, the strange occurrences ceasing entirely. However, the restaurant now had a new allure, the legend of Madame Eclair's return. Guests came not just for the food, but to experience the magic of a place where boundaries between the living and the dead had once blurred. I often find myself staring at the spot where she reappeared, the scent of roses forever etched in my memory. Eclairs wasn't just a restaurant. It was a testament to undying passion and the lengths one would go to right or wrong.